What's good, YouTube? It's your boy, Blue Blood Sports TV, back at y'all with another one. So, former two-division world champion, former unified junior welterweight world champion, former WBC welterweight world champion, Danny Swift Garcia, superstar boxer, whom faced the best of the best in the sport of boxing in his career, has one of the best resumes going. With that said, Danny Garcia, he was asked about a potential future mega showdown between undefeated three-division world champion, former junior welterweight undisputed world champion, currently the WBO welterweight world champion, who is widely considered by many to be the number one pound-for-pound fighter in the world, in Terence Bud Crawford, and a guy he just recently fought, an undefeated unified WBC IBF welterweight world champion superstar boxer who is widely considered by many to be top 3 pound-for-pound fighters in the world, in Errol "The Truth" Spence Jr. He was also asked about how Errol Spence Jr. would match up with another guy who he fought, in former unified WBC WBA welterweight world champion superstar boxer Keith one-time Thurman. Keith Thurman, he picked up the WBC title by beating Danny Garcia in his showdown with Danny Garcia. So Danny Garcia, he weighed in. He fought Errol Spence in his last fight. He lost a unanimous decision to Errol Spence. He fought Keith Thurman, and he fought Terence Crawford in the amateurs. Okay, he came up short against Keith Thurman in his fight. In the amateurs, he faced off against Terence Crawford, in which he split with Terence Crawford. Okay, he won one. Terence Crawford won one. Thus, the reason why Terence Crawford was stating that he wanted to face Danny Garcia because he wanted the tiebreaker. Okay, so with that said, Danny Garcia has faced the best of the best. Okay, he faced Sean Porter, two-time welterweight world champion, superstar boxer. He faced him back in September of 2018. He faced Keith Thurman back in March of 2017, and he just recently faced Errol Spence Jr. this past December. With that said, he fought Terence Crawford, as I stated, in the amateurs. With Keith Thurman, he lost a split decision. Now, the first half of the fight against Keith Thurman, Keith Thurman was winning the fight clearly, but Danny Garcia, he started to find his rhythm, he started to find his distance and his timing, and he closed the gap, and it was a split decision victory for Keith Thurman in the end. With Sean Porter got a unanimous decision victory over Danny Garcia, and Errol Spence also got a unanimous decision. So when comparing, that's his 3 losses on his resume. He's only lost 3 times, and those are his 3 losses. 36 wins, okay, to 21 knockouts, and the 3 losses are to the guys I just mentioned. Now, with that said, he stated that when it comes to Errol Spence and Keith Thurman, he stated that Keith Thurman is more skilled than Errol Spence Jr., but he says Errol Spence is 3 times as strong as Keith Thurman, and he says that Errol Spence is far more physical and has more physicality than Keith Thurman. So he believes that Keith Thurman would lose the fight to Errol Spence should that ever come to fruition. Now, we know Errol Spence, ever since he defeated Kell Brook back in 2017, to become a world champion for the first time in Kell Brook's backyard in the UK, in the United Kingdom, he's been looking to unify with Keith Thurman. He was pursuing Keith Thurman aggressively, and Keith Thurman just would not give him the opportunity. Keith Thurman was stalling the fight out. As Keith Thurman has admitted, he was stalling the fight out because he viewed the fight as his Manny Pacquiao, Floyd Mayweather moment for his career. He looked at Errol Spence as either Manny Pacquiao if he looked at himself as Floyd Mayweather, or he looked at Errol Spence as Floyd Mayweather if he was Manny Pacquiao. He felt like that was his super fight in his career, but he ended up losing the 8-division world champion, legendary, iconic Filipino superstar boxer, Manny Pacquiao himself. He ended up getting the fight with Manny Pacquiao July of 2019, and he lost a split decision to Manny Pacquiao. So he didn't need the Manny Pacquiao, Floyd Mayweather moment, because he actually got in the ring with Manny Pacquiao, but he lost. Now, that's the only loss on Keith Thurman's resume, is that Manny Pacquiao fight, okay? But the opportunity to fight Errol Spence in a huge fight slipped by the wayside because he lost his WBC title that he won, beating Danny Garcia split decision. He lost it due to inactivity, and then he lost the WBA title to Manny Pacquiao. Errol Spence has now stated that he has no interest in facing Keith Thurman because Keith Thurman just would not give him the opportunity when the stakes was at its highest. So then he moved on, that being Danny Garcia, to what it would be like, for Errol Spence and Terence Crawford. Okay, now obviously we saw Errol Spence. He fought Sean Porter and he beat Sean Porter. Okay, now it was a very, very close fight, but Errol Spence won the fight. And, it was a situation where Errol Spence knocked Sean Porter down in the 11th round of the fight. And then he clearly won the 12th round, which to me gave him the nod. Okay, he separated himself. But it was a very close fight that was going back and forth. And, a lot of people, some people had it a draw. Some people had Sean Porter winning. And people had Errol Spence winning, okay? But it was a split decision victory for Errol Spence Jr., and I thought the knockdown proved to be the difference, okay? Now, when it goes to Terence Crawford and Errol Spence, who obviously Danny Garcia, he faced in the amateurs. Now, you have to take it, with a grain of salt, to say the least, because his experiences with Terence Crawford were in the amateurs. But he says that skill-wise, Terence Crawford and Errol Spence are on the same level. But strength-wise, obviously, seeing as though Terence Crawford started his career at 130, 135, and 140, then moved up to 147. He's a 3-division world champion. He gives the strength and the physicality to Errol Spence. Errol Spence being 5'9.5" with a 72-inch arm reach. He's younger than Terence Crawford at 31 years of age. Terence Crawford is at 5'8" with a 74-inch arm reach. But like I said, his frame allowed him to fight at lower weight classes. So skill-wise, he says that Terence Crawford and Errol Spence are on the same level. He looks at it similar to what Keith Thurman and Errol Spence situation. He feels like Terence Crawford is more skilled than Errol Spence, seeing as though he faced Terence Crawford twice in the amateurs. He feels like Terence Crawford is more skilled than Errol Spence, but Errol Spence is the bigger, stronger guy, and he's just definitely more aggressive and is more physicality, okay? So then he ended up at the end saying that all of these guys are great, and Sean Porter included, are all on the same level. Now, they've all mixed it up with one another. Sean Porter has fought Danny Garcia, Keith Thurman, and Errol Spence. Keith Thurman has fought Danny Garcia, Sean Porter, he hasn't, and Manny Pacquiao. He hasn't faced Errol Spence. Errol Spence has faced Sean Porter, Danny Garcia, Kell Brook, and, they're fighting. They're mixing it up with one another, okay? He don't have no interest in fighting Keith Thurman, but I believe at some point in time he'll waver and that fight will come to fruition. Terence Crawford is the odd man out. He has faced none of these guys, but again, Terence Crawford started his career in a smaller weight class. These guys all started their careers in the same weight class outside of Danny Garcia, who started his career at junior welterweight, okay? Terence Crawford started 2 weight classes below Danny Garcia. Now, Danny Garcia eventually moved up to welterweight, and still in all, he got these fights, okay? He fought Sean Porter, he fought Keith Thurman, and he fought Errol Spence, okay? So he's gotten the big fights. So with that said, the physicality, he gives the edge and the nod to Errol Spence. Errol Spence is the bigger, naturally bigger guy than Terence Crawford. But lately, Terence Crawford, he's added some bulk, okay? He's grown into the division. And Terence Crawford has knocked out his last 6 opponents, including his last fight at junior welterweight when he defeated Julius Indongo for undisputed at junior welterweight. He knocked out Julius Indongo, then he moved up to welterweight. He knocked out Jeff Horn for the WBO title, who Jeff Horn had just recently beat Manny Pacquiao. Then he knocked out Jose Benavidez Jr. Then he knocked out Amir Khan. Then he knocked out Igis Kavalaskas. And most recently, he knocked out former IBF welterweight world champion, British superstar boxer, Special K. Kell Brook. Okay, that was November 14th. That was Terence Crawford's last fight. So Terence Crawford has shown that his power and his physicality has translated up into the welterweight division, more so than it did at the junior welterweight division. Okay, so Terence Crawford has proven to be a physicality in the sport of boxing, that he could be very physical. So with that said, Terence Crawford is also very versatile, right? He can switch from orthodox to southpaw very fluidly. So this what makes the super fight between himself being Terence Crawford and Errol Spence Jr., because everybody want to see these two titans clash. So Danny Garcia, he then closed but by saying that he's planning to move up to junior middleweight, 154, his next fight. Now, he's not the biggest guy in the world at 5'8", with a 69-inch arm reach, okay? He's not the biggest guy in the world. But he's looking to become a world champion there. Those guys are very big, very strong. So it's going to take a lot of matchmaking for him to become a world champion at 54. And seeing as though we're going to have an undisputed showdown between two-time junior middleweight world champion who's unified junior middleweight world champion superstar boxer, Jermell Charlo. He'll be taking on Brian Castano, who has the only piece to the puzzle missing with the WBO belt. So that will be taking place July 17th. So all roads to becoming a champion at junior middleweight is going to have to go through Jermell Charlo, unless they come up with some other belts and some interim belts and silver belts and diamond belts, those types of things, which won't surprise me. If that's the case, then he could become a world champion. But we got to see how this unfolds and plays out. We're still waiting for the announcement for Errol Spence Jr. versus current WBA super champion, welterweight super champion, Cuban star boxer Yordenis Ugas, who was elevated to the WBA super champion when Manny Pacquiao, who beat Keith Thurman for the WBA title, lost that belt due to inactivity. There was supposed to be an announcement this Saturday during the Andy Ruiz Chris Arreola pay-per-view event, but there still was no announcement. So let's see how this unfolds and plays out. But that's all I got for y'all. Make sure you hit the like button. Drop a comment in the comment section. Let me know what y'all think. Y'all already know what it is. It's your boy Blue, Blue Blood Sports TV. Hate, like, comment, and subscribe. You haven't subscribed? Hit the subscribe button. Hit the like button. Hit the bell icon to get all the new notifications. Follow me on Instagram at Blue Blood Sports TV, all one word. Y'all already know what it is. Shout out to the entire LDBC. Shout out to New Media. Shout out to Black Media Row. Make sure you like and share these videos. That's all I got for y'all. Peace.
Oh, it is your boy Jada Kiss. Make sure you check out Blue Blood Sports TV. It's going down.